Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the workshop establishing the suitability of model integrated evidence to demonstrate bioequivalence for long-acting injectable and implantable drug products. My name is James Polli, a faculty member at the University of Maryland. And on behalf of myself and Andy Schwinnon from the University of Maryland, welcome to this uh, CRCG, that is Center for Research on Complex Generics workshop, co-sponsored with the Food and Drug Administration. And on the slide, hopefully you can see our the website, complexgenerics.org. Uh, since it's a little early here in North America and parts of South America, what I'll do is, if you have not already done this, go to that website and look at the agenda and bios. And I'll just divert and do that right now. For those of you who early this morning have not been able to do that yet. So here is a copy of the agenda posted on complexgenerics.org. And that's going to be a full day. As you can see in the first portion, we have lots of speakers from some experts in modeling and study design. I think the one thing I'll just point out is that we have a really substantial amount of time, about 2 hours of live panel discussion. So I would encourage you to use the chat feature at any time to ask questions of the panel. I'd also like to just point out that we do have bios available on the website, so we won't be doing long introductions of the people who have many years of experience in this area, but kindly refer you to the bios. Okay, what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes just telling you about this relatively new Center for Research on Complex Generics, started just over a year ago, and also maybe give you just some comments, additional comments about today's workshop. Okay, again, my name is James Polli, and with Anna Schwinnon, we are co-directors of the center. Visha Krishnan is the manager, and I would just encourage you to sign up at complexgenerics.org to get on our emailing list. So, for example, in the next couple of months, we plan on deciding about what workshops to hold in the forthcoming year, and we'd like to be able to tell people about that. So the mission of the center is to increase access to safe and effective generic drugs through enhanced infrastructure, communication, education, research collaboration across industry, academia, and FDA. And we aim to do this through communications, education, and research. So we do have a significant training mission. Admittingly, it's been a little challenging with the current COVID situation. In 2022, we're hoping to have some in-person activities such as hands-on laboratory demonstrations, although at this time I can't say we've really have that exactly planned at this point. But again, we hope to be able to tell you in the next couple months. This is actually the third workshop that we've had in our first year of the center. So in 3 weeks, slides from today's presentations and recordings, including, for example, these slides in this recording, will be available at the website complexgenerics.org. Also, slides are available from the prior 2 workshops, as well as recordings, although the recordings for the first workshop are actually a little bit delayed, and hopefully will be up hopefully later this week, actually. As far as we do have a research mission also, most notably for the purposes of this workshop, we do have one project, and we'll be hearing about from a couple of people working on this really, on best practices for establishing the suitability of a model integrated approach to demonstrate the bioequivalence of long-acting injectable products. A little bit more about that later. Also, just like to tell you that we did complete a survey, much thanks to the several hundred participants who completed that survey. This survey was with regard to scientific challenges in the development of complex generics, where a couple questions were asked, such as which products needed to be a focus in terms of developing, say, standards and greater science, which analytical techniques are most needed in the space of complex generics, as well as which educational topics. And this survey was written up and recently accepted for publication in the Journal of Pharmaceutical Research. So we look forward to hopefully in January it being published. And again, we'll be able to, if you sign up for our website, we'll be able to send that out when it's available. Just in terms of some of the results, high-level results from this particular survey, again, there was 3 questions about which products to focus on, which analytical techniques to focus on, and which educational topics to focus on, and just kind of ranking things in terms of what were the most common answers, first, second, and third. With regard to complex injectables, that did pretty well in terms of this particular survey. For example, we see which products coming in first, so to speak, in terms of how the questions were crafted. Complex injectables, formulations, and nanomaterials was actually scored very high. Similarly, that was the same topic in terms of educational topics. I guess I'll also just add that modeling and simulation actually did quite well in terms of analytical techniques. Another question I think you might be interested in regards harmonization. So one question on this survey was, to what extent should a harmonized international approach be employed with regard to regulatory standards relating to the development and approval of complex generic products? And it was a Likert type scale, and we see strongly agree and agree take up virtually the entirety of all answers. So a lot of harmonization there with regard to the question of harmonization. Additionally, we're doing interviews with stakeholders, mostly generic companies, but also CROs and such, talking about lots of different topics. Maybe one thing we'll just highlight with regard to bioequivalence study design and modeling. Here's just some quotes from some of the discussions that we've had over the last year. I'll just maybe read a couple. Finding alternatives for performing clinical endpoint studies is important, but generic companies do not want to be trailblazers. Lack of universally accepted models for complex generics is an issue, so forth. Again, these slides will be available. Obviously, we'll hear a lot more about this later in the day, throughout the day. So with regard to today's workshop, again, this is on bioequivalence of long-acting injectables as they're a challenge. As you know, they typically currently require, in general, lengthy BE studies that use patient populations and often require multiple doses, potentially taking months for each patient to reach steady state. So the goal of this workshop is to focus on how model integrated approaches can support innovative study designs and data analysis, and how they can be validated and verified. Again, biographies and the agenda are available online. Again, really encourage you to ask questions. And again, copies of slides and recordings will be available from the website within 3 weeks. Okay, so thank you for your participation. Again, there's significant time for discussion. Please use the chat. Much thanks to all the speakers, moderators, and panelists. This really represents probably about 6 months of many people's work. Also, much thanks for Geraldine and Joga, who are doing some research and have agreed to present their preliminary results with an eye towards you maybe making suggestions. Can't really guarantee that they'll take up all the suggestions, but certainly in this experiment about how to go forward in trying to make BE more efficient, your input is certainly sought, and hopefully we'll be able to make some implementations. Much thanks also to Myung Yi and Lucy from the FDA for putting a lot of effort into putting this together. Also, my thanks to Dana and Visha. Okay. Okay, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, providing some opening remarks, Robert Lionberger, who I think all of you know. He is the Director of the Office of Research and Standards in OGD. He leads OGD's implementation of the GDUFA science and research commitments, including internal research activities and external research grants in collaboration to ensure the therapeutic equivalence of generic drug products. I also know he's a big advocate of modeling, simulation, and innovative study design. Thanks, Rob.
All right, thank you, Jim, and welcome everyone to this workshop. First of all, I'd like to thank the Center for Research in Complex Generics for their work in organizing this workshop and the other workshops that we've had this year. It's been a great first year for the center, and it's really exceeded our hopes for really engaging with the scientific and industry community that's supporting the development of complex generics. We want the workshops that we conduct with the Center for Complex Generics to really be deep technical dives into the cutting edge scientific issues around complex generics that are directly and currently relevant to the development of complex generics. And I think you've seen that in the two previous workshops we've had, and it's definitely true here. And as you see from our agenda, we're bringing experts from the academic world, also the industry perspective, into this workshop. So it's not a one-way. The hallmark of the work that I think the Center for Complex Generics is doing is not that it's one-way communications from FDA, but it's interaction with the community of people working in each of these technical areas. And so we really look forward to this workshop. And today we'll be focusing on long-acting injectables. And as everyone knows, it's very difficult to design and conduct bioequivalence studies for long-acting injectables. However, we believe that by including modeling and simulation approaches as part of the BE study design, we have the possibility of much more efficient methods for these products. And as you look across the space, there's very few generics that are available for these long-acting products, primarily because of the challenging aspects of these study designs. But this can really be a game changer. BE is, but it's difficult. Bioequivalence has been a very cautious field, but I think here we have a real opportunity to move forward because we've seen in the long-acting injectable case area where we've just really run into some of the fundamental challenges of our usual way of doing bioequivalence. So it's a real opportunity to advance the new science of model integrated evidence in this case, but I think the model integrated evidence for bioequivalence also is an approach that can go beyond long-acting injectables. But we really see long-acting injectables as the first place that this can make an immediate impact. And as Jim mentioned, we hope that all the attendees, again, this is a really focused workshop. I believe that all of you understand the challenges in bioequivalence studies for long-acting injectables because of the long duration of the drug of exposure from one dose of the product. And in this case, in the best scenario, where you end up with is, maybe the active ingredient is safe enough that I can do a parallel study in healthy volunteers, but then I'm stuck with a parallel study that has relatively low power for bioequivalence. In a much more common case for the long-acting injectables, because of the long duration of exposure, you can really only expose patients to these products. And if you try to do a crossover design in a patient population, you end up trying to bring them back to steady state. You can have bioequivalence studies that might hypothetically last multiple years. And if this isn't really going to happen, it's not an optimal path. And so there's really opportunity here to use the model integrated approaches to improve access to generic versions of these products. And I want to really say a little bit about the model integrated evidence. What it really is using modeling from the start as you're thinking about developing the bioequivalence approach. And then you can integrate that model into both the in vitro comparisons that you do between a brand and generic product, as well as targeted in vivo studies that generate data, where that when you put all of this together, the model then provides an overall decision process about bioequivalence. And so it's really important that the modeling approach be developed at the beginning before the in vivo studies are conducted. I think sometimes we've seen in the past people say, well, I did a study and now I want to retrospectively use modeling to sort of learn something from. So certainly that's, I think, a good way to learn something. But as you move toward pivotal bioequivalence methods and replacing the pivotal bioequivalence study, it's really important to have that prospective pre-specified modeling analysis built in. And I think that's something we'll emphasize in this workshop here today. Another aspect of this workshop that is really exciting to me is that it combines two streams of modeling approaches that we think are very important for generic drug product development. The PBPK models about the mechanistic, especially the mechanistic-based models on how the long-acting formulations work, how the drug that's released from them is metabolized and cleared, combined with the second stream, which is the population modeling approaches, to look at the populations that you're using, look at extrapolations to different groups, provide a framework for virtual bioequivalence. And we think in these cases, and this is, I think, true for other complex generics as well, that you're really going to make progress when you combine both of these two areas into a more integrated approach. And I think we'll hear a little bit about that today as well as we talk about. And from FDA's perspective, we've been funding research in both of these approaches toward long-acting injectables. And the point of workshops like today is to really begin to integrate these approaches into an overall way of accelerating bioequivalence. But I think this is an exciting theme, and it's an important area, I think, in the modeling and simulation community for, as well as sort of how do you bring together the approaches of the mechanistic and the population approaches. And so it's really excited that we're combining these in this area. And I think that's something that will, is an advantage that will go beyond this particular area. But I think that, we have to recognize that model integrated evidence is a new concept, and we really need to establish processes and procedures and best practices for using these approaches so that applicants can confidently use these during their generic drug development and the submission of ANDAs to FDA. And I think that's an important part of this workshop, bringing together different stakeholders from industry, academic experts, and FDA to really establish what that is. And, and that's why the workshops like this are so important, as bringing that together. I think one of the things you'll see at this workshop that's also really exciting is we're using the Center for Generics to help develop some example data sets and case studies. You'll hear a little bit about our collaborators on that. But the eventual idea is these can be shared with the whole community so that people can help build confidence in how you do these types of analysis. And I think that's something that the Center for Complex Generics is facilitating. We have a set of fantastic speakers in the morning today. And then, as Jim mentioned as well, we have a long after lunch 2-hour time period for discussions, questions, really, understanding some of these key questions. What are the challenges in moving into implementation of these model integrated evidence approaches? And finally, for the generic industry, as you're learning from this workshop and you're thinking about using these approaches in your generic drug submissions, I want to emphasize how important it is to use the programs that FDA has in place for pre-ANDA meetings, both our pre-submission meeting and our product development meeting for these approaches. You can get, we're very open to meeting about these approaches especially for complex generics. And you can get feedback from us, before you start the study through the product development process. We know that this is complicated and new, so we're willing to meet around these and help come to some alignment on the best way to do the studies. We also want you to use the pre-submission meetings before you submit your application. Say you're using a model integrated approach, and it's completed, you're getting ready to submit, use the pre-submission meeting process to share that new approach with the FDA review staff before the application comes in. We'll be able to give you feedback on, how to present it in your application effectively, how to communicate it. It also gives us time to prepare, and hopefully this can lead to much more efficient reviews of these new approaches. So we encourage you to engage with our regulatory processes around the pre-ANDA meetings, which are really designed to help bring novel cutting-edge science into the ANDA review process. So with that, I look forward to this workshop and the panel discussion, and look forward to an exciting day. Thank you all very much for attending and supporting the complex drug development and processes.